Now back to apologies. The British have a moral conscience. Look, after the invasion of Iraq, did we just accept that there was an invasion of Iraq? We sit back and accept it. In fact, in the run-up to the invasion, there were hundreds of thousands of us in Hyde Park demonstrating against it. Since the invasion, the British people won't allow the government to accept, to sit back and accept the official version of what occurred in 2003. We've had the Hutton inquiry, we've had the Butler inquiry, we now have the Chilcot inquiry. The newspapers are badgering the government. What happened in 2003? What did the Attorney General advise? Was he put under pressure? The conscience of the British people will not allow them to just accept the illegality or the alleged illegality. And there's a moral conscience in this country which occasionally rises to the surface. The best example is, do you want to come in? One or two guests. Bloody Sunday provides me with the best example, and this is provides us with an excellent analogy with Cyprus. On the 15th of June last month, the new British Prime Minister, David Cameron, went to the House of Commons and issued a statement in the light of the inquiry published by Lord Savile after 12 years. We know that the inquiry took too long, arguably, but it was part of the peace settlement in Northern Ireland. And we know that Lord Savile acknowledged that there had been wrongdoing on the part of the British Armed Forces on the streets of Northern Ireland in 1972. I want to focus on the words of the Prime Minister in his statement. This is a statement given to Parliament 38 years after Bloody Sunday. And the question, there's a hypothetical question here that I'm going to pose. Can we expect Turkey to provide a similar apology? And if not, does Turkey have a moral conscience in the way that this country does? So think about Turkey as I read to you this extract. This is what Mr. Cameron said a month ago. I am deeply patriotic. I never want to believe anything bad about our country. I never want to call into question the behaviour of our soldiers, which I believe to be the finest in the world. And I have seen for myself the very difficult and dangerous circumstances in which we ask our soldiers to serve. But the conclusions of the Savile report are absolutely clear. There is no doubt. There is nothing equivocal. There are no ambiguities. What happened on Bloody Sunday was both unjustified and unjustifiable. It was wrong. Lord Savile concludes that the soldiers of Support Company who went into the Bogside did so as a result of an order which should not have been given by their commander. Mr. Cameron added, these are after giving us the key elements of the Savile inquiry. These are shocking conclusions to read and shocking words to have to say, but we do not defend the British Army by defending the indefensible. We do not honour all those who have served with distinction in keeping the peace and upholding the rule of law in Northern Ireland by hiding from the truth. So there is no point in trying to soften or equivocate about what is in this report. It is clear from the tribunal's authoritative conclusions that the events of Bloody Sunday were in no way justified. This was remarkable, of course, because the British Prime Minister back in 1972 was Edward Heath, a Conservative. Now, having issued this apology in the Commons, David Cameron went on to say something which is of profound significance. And I want the refugees, any refugees in the hall?
Plenty, yeah,
Plenty. I want the refugees to just absorb these words and think about whether we can hear. We need to call on the Turkish Prime Minister to do something similar, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask the Turkish Prime Minister to do something similar. This is what Mr. Cameron said. Mr. Cameron's a 43-year-old. He was a child in 1972 at the time of Bloody Sunday. I know, Mr. Cameron said, that some people wonder whether, nearly 40 years on from an event, a Prime Minister needs to issue an apology. For someone of my generation, Bloody Sunday and the early 1970s are something that we feel we have learnt about rather than lived through. But what happened should never, ever have happened. The families of those who died should not have had to live with the pain and hurt of that day and with a lifetime of loss. Some members of our armed forces acted wrongly. The government, the British government, are ultimately responsible for the conduct of the armed forces. And for that, on behalf of the government, indeed on behalf of our country, I am deeply sorry. Now, if the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom can express sorrow and issue an apology in respect of events in Northern Ireland in 1972, why shouldn't Turkey issue an apology for what it did in 1974? There has been a Savile inquiry of sorts in relation to 1974, and the Savile inquiry in relation to Cyprus is to be found in the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. I want to just refer to two of these judgments very briefly, and they're to do with the missing persons. We've heard about the property issue, but the missing persons, I think, issue is the one that is most delicate and sensitive, and it strikes at the heart of my argument about ethics and ethical conduct. The European Court of Human Rights held in the 2001 Cyprus and Turkey case that there had been a continuing violation of the right to life on account of the failure of Turkey to conduct an effective investigation into the whereabouts of the Greek Cypriot missing persons who disappeared in life-threatening circumstances. I read from the judgment. The court held by 16 votes to 1 that there had been a continuing violation of Article 5, the right to liberty and security, by virtue of the failure of the Turkish government to conduct an effective investigation into the whereabouts of the missing. And they held by 16 votes to 1 that there had been a continuing violation of Article 3, the prohibition of torture or degrading or inhuman treatment or punishment in respect of the relatives of the missing. Are there any relatives of the missing persons here? Well, it grieves me to say this, but you are, as we all know, victims of a continuing violation of your human rights. Now, that was in 2001. Did Turkey issue an apology after 2001? That carries even greater weight than the Savile inquiry, arguably, because that's a court of law consisting of 17 judges. 16 to 1 were in favour of the relatives of the missing. We had another European Court of Human Rights judgment last year, which has been overlooked because of all of the other cases we've had. It's the case of Varnava, I hope I pronounced that correctly, in Turkey. The European Court of Human Rights last year reprimanded Turkey for the same points, same violations, in respect of a smaller group of missing, 9, I believe. Held by 16 votes to 1 last year, there was a continuing violation of Article 2, a continuing violation of Article 3, and a continuing violation of Article 5. In other words, between 2001 and 2009, Turkey did nothing to comply with the requirements of the European Court of Human Rights judgment. So what do I do as an academic? I went to the website of I went to the official website of the Turkish Foreign Ministry to see if I could find an apology, or at least an acknowledgement of this judgment by the European Court of Human Rights. And what do I find? The usual propaganda. According to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, and I looked this up on the 11th of July, 3 days ago, so they've had over 6 months to act upon the judgment of the court in 2009, in the autumn of 2009. According to the Turkish Foreign Ministry, no human tragedy has been subject of such blatant political exploitation as the case of the missing persons in Cyprus. During the fighting with Turkish troops, between the 16th of July and the 16th of August, many Greek Cypriots died in combat. So far as possible, their bodies were recovered and identified by Turkish forces. And on it goes. Nothing remotely similar to what Mr. Cameron said after Bloody Sunday's inquiry by Lord Savile. And that, in my view, says something about the moral conscience of the Turkish government and indeed the Turkish state. And it's something that we need to work on. We need to try and instill in the Turkish psyche the beauty associated with the law as we understand it in the liberal West. A law which is humane and which floats on a sea of ethics.